Come on, Facebook. Ciao tutti, it's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video, trying to speak Italian, even though I only spoke Italy in and for the football. But I thought I'd get round to. I did want to talk about. I wanted to sort out my paperworks, and I wanted to write my ideas on paper, and I wanted to do lots of things, but I just didn't have the energy as usual. And weather-wise here in the UK, it's been a bit of a mix. It's been like raining, miserable, cloudy weather, and then it's been quite sunny for a while. It's like between seasons. I think in Britain they say. I think April's supposed to be spring, but it's kind of like they say April showers. In other words, it rains a lot. For those who don't know, in Britain in April, although so far we haven't had that much rain, but today it's been chucking it down for a while and miserable weather. I've been really cold. I had to. I'd close all my doors and I'd close the curtains and blinds as soon as I can. But my mum's like, so I'm telling my life story now as usual. But my mum's like, why do you close the blinds and curtains so early and all that kind of thing? And also, my cat has to go in and out. We don't have any cat flaps, so we have to go all around the place. But anyway, nice life story. Sorry. But yeah, I've also been trying to sit comfortably. But yeah, lacking energy. I haven't managed to go through my paperworks. I haven't managed to. And I haven't managed to do lots of things. I wanted to talk about um, I wanted to make a video like message to Italian fans and go through or things about Italian football. But I think I'll do that in May maybe or some other time. But yeah, I just haven't had the energy, and I suppose I'm behind schedule as per usual. But anyway, this is part 4 of what Italian football should change to improve. I suppose you could say how to improve Italian football, but in order to improve it, it needs to change. So I thought, as per usual, I was struggling to come up with ideas for this, and I thought I'd do the usual thing of talking about what I hope to achieve in the future, which, to be honest, I normally say putting into practice what I've been discussing before, in this case, in part 1, 2, and 3. I thought I'd drink this. In fact, I was going to drink it a bit later, but I thought this is my fantasy for Italian football changing. As I say, that was my fantasy. They no joke of mine. But anyway, these are, as per usual, for part 4, pointers number 31 to 40 on, I guess in this case, what I hope Italian soccer or football or whatever you want to call it will change. So, having said that, with that being said, or whatever, here goes. So, number 31, I hope that, as I call them, which feels a bit hypocritical to say, but the old dinosaurs, I'm not quite as old as them, but as old as them, young at heart anyway, but the old dinosaurs who are unwilling to change, I hope they get removed. I suppose Gravina, one of the people involved in Syria, I think he was one who was running the FIGC, sorry. I think he has resigned. I think he was a top guy. But if they just replace him with other old guys in suits who don't know much about football, probably just money-minded or whatever, and just take the money but don't really invest or don't improve things and just want to do things the old way, I fear it's going to be the same old. But I hope that, I know I'm stubborn myself, but I was talking about, I meant to say, and I was struggling to remember something about when I used to play football, and being an Italian fan, I thought I'd get into defence. So I played a defensive position. For a while, I decided to get into midfield. But I think Italians growing up, I think I was trying to say this point, I kept forgetting my point, but I was thinking like, I talked about like Italians playing in different positions. So I hope young Italians will be encouraged to be goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, and strikers. So Italy would have a good balance. And Italia, I prefer the word Italia more than Italy for some reason. I sort of mentioned that in a comment on Caucasian on a Celtic YouTube channel, and he said it's probably because Italia is more macho, but I don't think that's the case because I'm not quite macho, not that macho. So, but for some reason I prefer the name Italia more than Italy. I think Italia is the name Italians give to Italy as well, but as it happens, but that's not the reason why. I don't know why I think it sounds better than Italy for some reason. But I'd love to see Italian soccer become more defensive and also, more attacking. I beg pardon. Some people might say it can't be any more defensive, but some people will probably want to see again. Some Italians say they want to see the old defensive ways. But even when we, I'll say as an Italian supporter, have done well, um, even when we have had great defensive players like Maldini, Nesta, Cannavaro, and people like that, it hasn't necessarily yielded to winning things I wanted. The thing I want Italy to win at international level, at least, which is the World Cup. And I love to see Italian club teams winning, like um, the Europa League, Conference League, and Champions League, World Club Cup and Super Cup and things like that. So winning outside of Italy, but I don't really care about if Italy wins like the Olympics and the Euros and that kind of thing, unless they do it with young players. And it's like even though they're young, they still manage to win. But for me, it's the World Cup that I want to see Italy do well at. But even when we had those great players, a lot of time we still didn't win. Teams that like Brazil, Argentina, and even Germany, Spain, and teams like that have had attacking players. I know about Germany's had like a really good disciplined team that has good defenders and attackers, but um, they've always had players who can score goals as well. And even when Italy did well, even when Italy went on to win the World Cup in 2006, it was with a mix of defensive and attacking players, but they also had to have those attacking players to score the goals. And in '82, the year I was born, it went quite attacking. And I think if you look back, if Italians look back, which I hope they will do, at all the teams that have won, I think most of them have been attacking. So as good as Italy's defence have been, hasn't managed to see tournaments through because we've lost to like France, we've lost to like Spain, France, Brazil, Argentina, and teams like that in the past a few times because they've had good attacking players, as good as our defence has been. But that's my opinion anyway. And moving on to number 32, talking of like I talked about like how I love to for Italy to, and I suppose this is how I hope to. I hope somehow those ideas. I do struggle to articulate my ideas and get other people to understand them, but I do hope that to implement those ideas. I'd love to go to. I talk about going to Italy and traveling with different groups. I'd love to work with different groups. Like if I talk about a mad idea I've got, I call like many of my ideas. You can probably tell I'm quite mad, but called one tour for one or share for share, and like for like and line for line and that kind of thing. But so if a mosque or a church or any other religious group or business or political party or whatever supports my goals of like helps with funding with travel or helps me to share my ideas with Italian football and Celtic and that kind of thing in this case especially Italian soccer, then I would love to give back by sharing Qurans or Bibles or whatever in whatever capacity I can, like in my local area or in my local town or city or whatever. But going back to the point I was going to mention it about learning from other nations like Spain. I'd love for Italy to work out the weaknesses and strengths of other national teams and other teams generally, so including at club team level. But so I'd love for Serie A teams to learn about La Liga and EPL teams' weaknesses and that sort of thing. So I think I don't know if they already do that, but I think people should be watching videos of the opposition and learning as much about them as possible to go and beat them. But Spain is a Mediterranean nation with Spain is a Mediterranean nation and therefore has a similar culture, I'm sure, to Italy. So I'm sure there's many similarities in their culture and their way of life. So I don't know why Italy can't implement what Spain does, because it's a similar climate, similar culture, and that kind of thing. So why can't we have that ability to pass and move like a taxi? I'm so cold. I'm wearing this scarf as well, by the way. I was going to say in the intro, but sorry, back to the topic. But yeah, like Spain is a Mediterranean nation with a similar culture, so why can't Italian soccer copy a lot of what Spain did in terms of their youth development, infrastructure, and things like that, which has helped them to win so many trophies, like 3 trophies in a row. And I'd love to see Italy win 3 World Cups in a row. Which is the opposite of what happened, and I mentioned that recently. But like Germany, what could Italian soccer implement from what Germany does? I suppose there are similarities with the structure and that kind of thing, but how Germany also has players in all positions that play well. I'd love to see Italy have more stronger midfielders and strikers. I suppose we kind of have done at times, but the system to go forward and to attack other teams and to defend when necessary. So the defenders could be good when they needed to be, and called upon when they needed to be, and a goalkeeper. But they're there as a last line defence when really necessary. But keeping the ball like Spanish football does, developing great players and utilising migration like France has done, and to an extent Germany, especially like developing players in all different positions and that kind of thing. Having the passion that Brazil has, Argentina and players like that, and the skillful players. For Italians to watch videos of, like I talked about, like Ronaldinho, Zidane, players like that, and others, and trying to copy their skills. And it might take a while, like learning through trial and error. But if they practice for an hour each day, like hitting the target, hitting the ball against the wall, practicing that accuracy, practicing passing and moving, practicing different styles, like the Spanish style, the Brazilian style, Argentinian style, and others, German and whatnot. So when we play against other teams, they might expect us to play a certain way. We can always change and be more versatile. I suppose the disadvantage on that is that you could lack an identity. So someone, a United fan, was talking about Man City and saying that, or just generally like saying United obviously lack the identity a while back. So I don't know if things have changed, but he was saying that we don't know if we're a team that passes and moves or keeps possession like Man City, or a team that presses like Liverpool or whatever. So I think it is difficult to get that balance right. But I do think the versatility, ability to try and play different tactics and be versatile if a tactic isn't working, and keep going till the end. Like, keep fighting if we are like 3 or 4 nil down. Very hard to see us come back from that score, but keep going and keep playing while you're on the pitch. You're always putting 100% and playing as a team. But as they're learning from other nations and what they do well, even England, like how they've developed good young players and that kind of thing, players that can run at defenders, and that kind of thing. I don't think Italy has enough players like that. Although I suppose you'd only need 1, 2, or maybe 3 players like that, like the wingers and one of the midfielders, maybe a striker. So 3 or 4 players like that. Later. I'm going to move on to number 33. So I hope to find a way. If you've got any tips on how I can put those ideas into action, how I could fundraise to travel to Italy, how I can bring different groups to have tournaments, how I can promote my ideas, and basically to put them into action, and what Italian soccer should change, and how it can change, and that kind of thing. I think I meant saying point number 31, but I forgot. But I mentioned I'm not sure if they should use people from overseas, foreigners, or whatever term you want to use, so much, and how loyal they could be. But maybe that needs to happen to bring in a change. And if they're paid enough, if Italian soccer can fundraise enough like England does to pay for, I suppose they don't do it for fundraising necessarily, but if Italian soccer can, and maybe local businesses or national businesses rather, can fund when it comes to the national team. I'd love for local businesses to fund teams like Roma and whatnot. But if the national team, businesses across Italy could perhaps help to fund the FIGC, the Italian FA, so they can pay Pep Guardiola to come and manage, or people like that, with strategies that can help to change things about the Italian national team. So to change the football culture in Italy. Funny enough, I know I'm wearing a Portugal cap, but so change that culture, change the traditions or whatever you would call it, to pass and move, to become more attacking, to press, and or whatever other strategies could help Italian soccer to change, moving away from the dark ages or whatever, to modernise itself. And part of me wants to see former players themselves manage and be involved in coaching again. And I talk about those, again, implementing those ideas I've talked about. I love to find ways to implement. So if you have any ideas on that, please let me know in the comments. And talking about local and national businesses in Italy and people on the diaspora, I know I talked about this before, but again, implementing what I talked about in parts 1, 2, and 3, like funding pitches, academies, and that kind of thing, training facilities, footballs in schools, having football on the curriculum in schools, and all sorts of things like that to encourage Italians to play and to fall in love with soccer again, and to practice as much as possible, to have as many opportunities to practice, and like have free opportunities, or at least reduced prices, so they can play soccer without having to pay a lot of money or whatever. I'd love to see as many free soccer pitches as possible, or even moving on to point number 34, given my use of patterns, even being paid, as I talked about before, to maybe like sponsors paying people to play soccer. So young Italians being paid to play more soccer, to practice more and practice as much as possible. And I think if Italians practice more than any other team, hopefully they'll win more in the future, be better than everyone else in soccer. And sorry, there's something else I was going to say about more, but I've completely lost your thought again. Practicing more than any other team, and hopefully winning more. And which at the moment is not saying much, but hopefully winning more than other teams in that kind of thing. I'd love to see Italy win more World Cups than Brazil and that kind of thing, or any other nation. And playing for as many hours a day as possible, improving diets and that kind of thing. I talked about that, playing soccer for 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and I say at least 1 hour a day in the park, at least 1 hour or 2 hours in school, like at lunch break, and in PE, physical education, playing soccer. So I'd love to see them play like 2 or 3 hours in school, maybe 4, and similar in the park, and like for each hour they spend online. Again, talking about implementing the ideas I talked about in parts 1, 2, and 3, and having all these possible academies and getting paid to play for soccer as much as possible, and going to different tournaments. Italian schools going to Brazil, Argentina, all of the Americas, Africa, Asia, and places like that to play soccer as much as possible. Again, soccer, football, or whatever you want to call it. Number 35. As I suppose it's one thing talking about the ideas, but how do they, as I say, talk is cheap, but how do they get to implement new strategies and new policies, and again change the culture, change the way of thinking? Like I said, I think the most successful teams, especially nowadays with the rules and how many good teams there are, I think the rules that you're not allowed to tackle people in a certain way, or things like tackle behind or whatever, and that kind of thing, all these sorts of rules I think favour more attacking teams. I talked about how I'd love to go and create different games, like you get a point per goal and you play different teams, so you add how many goals you score, so defending wouldn't be quite as good. But even if you look at the rules that already exist, like you get 3 points for a win, and only 1 for a draw, and if you unlike cricket where you can play for 3 days and get a draw, in soccer you play for, if you play in a tournament, you can play up to 2 hours and then you'll end up on penalties or whatever. So one team has to win. So you have to score at some point, even if it goes all the way to penalties. So having those players in different positions, having more attacking players, and playing in the opposition's half, keeping the ball more, and things like that. Again, I'd love to go to Italy and share my strategies and that kind of thing. Number 36. And Italians, as I say, to love soccer as much as possible, to fall in love with soccer, as I say, and to play as much as possible and learn, as I say, learn from other nations, Brazil, Argentina, Germany, France, Spain, and all those other nations, England and whatnot, and mistakes to avoid, learn from the past, what doesn't work and what does work, and to always, I think that was the point I was trying to remember in point number 34, to continuously try to improve. Again, I love to see Italians practice, like copying skills by Zidane and Ronaldinho, and I suppose I'm not the most patient myself, so that again this feels a bit hypocritical to say, but unlike me, I guess, to keep practicing those skills over and over again. Like even sometimes going to the garden and kicking the ball against the wall, hitting a target, especially from further distance, or things like trying different skills. Parents encouraging their kids to try, and I think a lot of times you learn from making mistakes. Although it's not nice to make mistakes, and it's certainly not nice to fail either. But it's, as I say, failure is rarely fatal, and success is rarely final. So you still have to improve. If you get complacent and think, "Oh, we made it now," then you go downhill. As Bill Gates says in business, and I think there's a lot of things that you could apply to soccer and say about the economy. I won't go into too much about that, but yeah, I mean, Bill Gates says like success is a lousy teacher because it teaches smart people to think you can't lose, and also when you do well, you have to keep doing well because people expect a lot from you. And I think you can apply that to soccer as well. Again, I think there's a lot of things in business and in the economy that apply to soccer and vice versa. Both could learn from each other, I guess. But talking about business as well, talking about people in suits, I think there needs to be a balance between those. Maybe even if they're not really that into football, but they could talk about ways to um, acquire investment and sponsorship and things like that. So how they could give creative ideas. So if they're used to acquiring investment for their business, they might know how a football club can do that. And again, the national team I'm mainly thinking of, but also similar for club teams. I talked about how the national team could work with the league Serie A, so the FIGC to work with Serie A, and the Coppa Italian and Super Cup and all those involved in Italian soccer, and even the wider nation and politicians and councillors to bring back the pride to Italian soccer, to always play at least 3 under 21 players in all senior games, to encourage older people to play football with younger people and train them and what's best for them, to develop them, improve diets, cutting back on smoking, drinking, taking drugs, or things like that, discouraging law breaking through football, bringing people together through football and soccer, or whatever you want to call it, and as I say, hopefully implement these ideas. Like, part of my fear is that they won't get implemented. Like, talking about the ideas again, hopefully people will understand my ideas and each other's ideas as well, and implement those ideas. And there was something I was thinking about saying, but I might include that a bit later. Hopefully, I'll remember. Yeah, businesses, even people who are not into soccer, but they might be encouraged. They might maybe give them tax losses to share, like how to acquire investment for soccer, and that kind of thing. How can Italian soccer acquire more investment and sponsorship and that kind of thing, which would benefit club teams, but also the national team if like they have more pitches and things like that. It's a bit of a dilemma I talk about, like with buying overseas players at the same time developing good, especially young Italian players in particular. Number 37, I hope they'll train as much as possible. I talked about before with Celtic. Number 38, I was thinking I'll be kicking myself if I forgot anything, but falling in love with football, I would say, loving football as much as soccer, or whatever you call it, as much as possible. Italians to bring back that pride, play as much soccer as possible, and remember, like, Italy was one of the top teams, and again, learn from trial and error, allow young people to make mistakes, to spend an hour a day copying Ronaldinho, and you might fall over sometimes, you might not. You have to do those tricks, but over time, hopefully, you'll learn them. And I suppose thinking about like how Brazil practice, what strategies they use, try and copy and paste some of those strategies. Like, I think they practice with smaller footballs, which give more, are more difficult, but they are good for practicing to improve. And also, again, Spain, France, and other nations, what they do well, Argentina and whatnot. I was thinking the manager could be someone like Scaloni, who won with Argentina. I forgot his first name. Luis Scaloni, or whatever his name is. I think it's Luis, but Philippe Scaloni, or something like that. He probably has Italian roots as well. I'd love for people like that to manage in and coach in Serie A and Chagall for the national team. Like Pep Guardiola. And how can Italian soccer bring in the best possible managers, coaches, dietitians, directors of football and whatnot that could improve the strategy and that kind of thing. Working with FIFA and UEFA, talk about as well. Maybe saying like, if you help us to have more soccer pitches, more people will play soccer, which would be good, I'm sure, for FIFA and UEFA even, especially for FIFA. Number 39, as I say, trying out different skills and remembering things like 94. Maybe there could be a campaign like, please remember 94 when Italy unfortunately lost to Brazil, and remembering defeats like that and saying, like, at the time Brazil and Italy were both on 3 World Cups each, so it's quite disappointing, but that pain could be used to make Italians practice more and more to try and make up for it and improve, to bring Italian soccer back to the glory days. And number 41 thing, I think this is the point I was trying to remember. I hope I don't forget, but I was thinking, if you have many people, they might say too many cooks spoil the broth, but at the same time, I think you can have many different ideas, many minds might make things better, but they could try and find ways where the best ideas win and learn from different strategies to say, how can the best ideas win? How can the best strategies win? And how can they learn from each other? That kind of thing. So agreeing to disagree sometimes, and like trying to have to put forward their point of view, so that again, no ideas are dismissed. But at the same time, I suppose it'd be difficult if someone says they want to do a certain thing, someone wants to do something very different, if not opposite. How do you get the balance right? And perhaps they'd have to argue their points and then maybe vote on them. They could write up essays on them, and I think like in schools having soccer on the curriculum, as I say, writing essays and people marking them and that kind of thing. But trying to find out ways to make the best ideas and strategies and thoughts and plans win. And that's my dream. And on that note, I'm out. Peace and love. One of many dreams.